Everybody, thanks for joining me today. This is Carl Hughes with Draft.dev, and I wanted to go ahead and share something new that we've been working on for a little while now. So when I first started Draft.dev, we kept our focus intentionally very narrow. We wanted to really get to be the best in the world at creating technical blog posts written for software engineers. So that's things like tutorials, high-level guides, technical architecture walkthroughs, things like that. Really tough content to produce, but also really fun to get good at. And so we've been able to do that over the last year. And what we're now starting to expand out into is helping our clients figure out what to write about. So the way we're doing that is through a strategy known as topic clusters. And here's a diagram that sort of illustrates how topic clusters are intended to work. The idea is that you can improve your rankings in search engines for your content by writing content that is related and interlinking it. And the key here is to aim for content that is possible to rank for based on your site's sort of strength in Google as it is today. So a lot of our clients are relatively early in their SEO journey, and they're just looking to start building up some domain authority, start getting some backlinks, start getting some articles that rank in the first page of Google results. And so for them, what we do is we start off with topic clusters that are relatively easy for them to rank their sub-articles on. So we've kind of got four in this topic cluster here. We've got 4 sub-articles and a umbrella article. So our umbrella article, or pillar piece as it's sometimes called, is essentially the biggest, most desirable piece of content, the thing that we want to point every sub-article to, but it's also probably the most competitive, the hardest to rank for. So our sub-articles are going to be related topics, but a lot easier to rank for, and we'll build then links into our big picture umbrella article. So that's the way that we typically will try to build and design these clusters. Now, designing this at a high level is very different from doing it in practice. So what I want to do in this video is explain exactly how we go through this process with our clients. And for the sake of simplicity, I've created a sample client. This is not a real client that we've worked with, but I'm going to go ahead and use them, and I've made up some details. This is a company called Pi IDE. They are a funded Series B startup with very little existing blog content. They're essentially an IDE at integrated development environment built specifically for Python developers. So maybe they compete with things like PyCharm. And they use a bottoms-up approach to marketing. That means they're targeting hands-on developers, Python developers who might eventually ask their employer to pay for team plans. So maybe there's a freemium element here where you can use the free version of Pi IDE personally, but then when you bring it into your company, you pay. And so the content we write could be aimed at either top of funnel, that means just any Python developer who is out there, or it could be middle of funnel, which is Python developers maybe looking for an IDE specifically. And we can kind of get into that once we get to the creating the actual clusters. The first thing we do with our clients when we decide that we want to approach this strategy of building topic clusters is we'll create a list of high-level concepts. Now, we sit down with our clients for usually 30 to 45 minutes to kind of talk about several things. We'll ask, like, what are some of your dream keywords, the things that you would love to rank number 1 for, the really, really short terms, the things like continuous integration, automated testing, or Python IDE. And so we'll ask our clients about those sorts of topics. We'll also ask maybe what work engineers are doing when they decide to use your product. What problems do they encounter leading up to that decision? What tools would they use alongside your product? Are there specific languages or frameworks that they need to use? Obviously, in this case, Python is a big one. We would ask what long tail searches they'd like to rank for, and we might ask, who are some of your direct competitors? Now, quick note on competitors. I don't really love the idea of doing like follow or competitor-based SEO, because what that means is you're sort of a follower in the field of SEO. It means you're just looking at what your competitors write about and then trying to one-up them just a little bit. And it's possible to do this. This is not an impossible strategy, but it's also a little bit of a lagging strategy. So your competitors have a leg up on you. And so I don't prefer it, but it is sometimes helpful to look at what direct competitors are doing from an SEO perspective to get more ideas. So typically after this planning session, we'll have a list of 10 to 50 keywords. Now, for the sake of brevity, didn't include all 10 to 50 because this is also a hypothetical client. So in real life, we would probably have a much larger list. And what we'll do is use some tools that are out there like Ahrefs, Google Keyword Planner. We'll look at industry research. We'll look at, again, competitors, and we'll end up generating thousands of keywords to explore in more detail. So this is, we may get a 10 to 50 list of keywords from the client. We'll go turn that into several thousand keywords, and then this is where the art and science start to blend. We'll go plug those keywords in and find their difficulty and the amount of traffic, estimated traffic for each keyword. And we will try to blend essentially the amount of traffic that keyword gets and the difficulty of ranking for it and the relevance for our client to come up with some topic clusters. And this can be a pretty involved process. It can take several iterations, but eventually what we want to do is come up with some lists of related topics that we think we could rank for relatively easy, and then some umbrella topics that are or the pillar topics that we kind of point all the other articles into. So here are the final clusters that we came up with, our topic clusters for this Python IDE. The first one is really relevant, really obvious one. And basically what we want it to do is build a cluster around the best Python IDE. Now this is a really difficult keyword. 42 is pretty high difficulty, and the volume is also accordingly really high, which is great. Now the challenge is, in order to rank for best Python IDE, we're gonna have to do a lot of work. I mean, this is probably one of our dream terms, to be honest, because this is essentially going to get a lot of really high intent search traffic. So what we need to do to get there is build out this supporting cluster and do it really well. Now you'll notice all the other articles in this cluster have relatively low difficulties, under 20 for sure, and I think all these are under 12. So we've got a pretty low difficulty and we've got fairly high volume, to be honest. These are pretty good terms. And what we give our clients is, here's a proposed title for each article and the keyword that we will be targeting in our outlines and briefs when we go there. And then we'll give a slug, which is like the URL ending portion that they can use. And not every client uses these, but this is just helpful if they can plan that out. And you'll see here what we've come up with are things like using Python Anywhere to edit Python in your browser. So Python Anywhere is another Python IDE, but it's browser-based. And so even though it's a competitor, we might want to target that term because it is very relevant to best Python IDE, which is likely going to be some kind of list or roundup of the best Python IDEs available. And so we will cover competitors even if it means we're giving them a little bit of space, because ultimately what we're going to do is compare each of these competitors to our solution. So while the article is primarily answering how to use Python Anywhere to edit in your browser, we might also point out that there are limitations to using Python Anywhere, and we might point towards our strengths to get readers at least understanding that that's an option. So this is again, like some clients don't like to use this sort of competitive approach. And so what might happen if we send this list of topics over to a client, they may say, we don't really feel good enough about our strength of brand to attack direct competitors, and so let's leave that cluster out. And in that case, we might swap it out for another one. So typically when we do this process, we'll come up with 2 to 3 clusters, depending on how many articles we're trying to target, and then we will iterate with the client as needed. Usually after a week, maybe less, we can come up with our sort of finalized list of topic clusters, and then we'll go into our typical process of creating outlines and briefs, and then working with our subject matter experts to create articles around each of these. And at Draft.dev, we work exclusively with practicing software developers so that they can write from a place of experience rather than typical SEO keyword writers or SEO professional writers. And we just use our editing staff to help sort of fill the gap between the subject matter experts and readers that are ultimately going to want a really high quality, well-written article. So if you'd like to give us a shout, I'd love to talk more about topic clusters and show you more about how we do this, as well as answer any questions. Feel free to go to draft.dev to find more. And I hope this has been a helpful and interesting insight into how we do our topic clusters at draft.dev.